Okay.
Farley, because he says he probably won't be here anyway. So here's what he says. My inquiry is about stage 7 purification process. A few months before I started formal TMI meditation, I did a lot of daily mindfulness practice. Unfortunately, when people use this term, I really never know what they're referring to. But anyway, as a result, I started feeling a loosening of tension in my chest. I had had that tension ever since I can remember. The tension was so uncomfortable that I was almost unable to lay on my stomach. After I started sitting meditation, the purification sped up, and I quite successfully went through what I believe I can describe as stage 4 purifications. Though purifications have been with me to some extent since stage 1, and as I mentioned earlier, even before that. There was this pattern to the purification process where I would feel as if there were a thick, hard jelly in the entire upper left part of my chest, some of which would loosen up one day. And the next day, I would feel energy sensations in that particular place, which were very soothing. The sensations were so overwhelming that I stopped sitting meditation and made the tension and following the energy sensations the focus of my attention throughout the day. As time went by, the tension in my chest became less and less uncomfortable, which tremendously raised the quality of my life. I believe I am going through stage 7 purifications now, but the purification pattern has changed. It is now just the tension loosening without the following energy sensations, which I find very uncomfortable at times. What would you advise me to do in this case? Also, how would you explain my uncommon, I believe, and strange purification patterns? If it's any help, I had full-blown BPD before the purifications, along with a host of other mental health issues, courtesy of an extremely traumatic childhood. Thanks to you, I am now free of almost all of them. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to say something about purifications in general. Purifications do not infrequently involve various sensations in the body. Also, the kinds of energy sensations that are being described here, in my experience, are usually more closely associated with unification of the mind. Now, these two things kind of go together. Purification is a very powerful way of bringing about greater unification of your mind. So it would be not unusual to have sensations that were primarily the result of something arising that needs to undergo purification, integration into the rest of mind system. And it's also not unusual for a successful purification to lead to energy sensations. So that's one way, without you being here and me being able to ask you specific questions, that's one interpretation I could put on these things. What gives me a little bit of hesitation, and once again, I wish you were here and I could ask you questions, is that it seems like everything that you're describing as a purification takes this particular form of some kind of unpleasant sensation in the body, and then that becomes transformed to a kind of energetic sensation that you find more pleasant or soothing. This is what I get from the description that you've provided. Now, it does happen that some purifications take place without you really ever knowing what it was that was being purified or knowing exactly how it became integrated. This can happen to anyone. But it's rare for that to be. As a matter of fact, I don't know of anybody that that's the only form that purifications take. So what I would describe, well, let me think about how to put this into words. I think very much these unpleasant sensations that you've described in your chest and so forth are the symptoms, the overt indicators that there is something that needs to be purified. And with your mention of your background, I'm sure you have a huge amount of stuff that needs to be purified. They would be the symptoms. Now, there's always two possibilities. We can either get rid of the cause of the symptoms and then the symptoms go away, or we can deal with the symptoms only. It's kind of the same way as with a health issue that produces unpleasant symptoms in the body. You can treat the cause, or you can treat the symptoms. A successful purification treats the cause, but merely learning ways to deal with the symptoms is not a purification, because the cause still lies there buried in your psyche, and it's still going to manifest in other ways. When you describe a long series of these things taking place from even before stage 1 and then right through to stage 7, I gather you're at stage 7 or beyond now. Hi, Ricardo, by the way, we're talking about the first question here. With this long series of things, I'm concerned that what's happened is that you have learned ways to mitigate the symptoms without necessarily resolving the cause. And that's going to come back to bite you later on. You don't really want to do that. So what I would highly recommend, beginning with whatever discomfort in your body may arise now, and whatever form it may take as it goes along, let's not assume that the changes, the qualitative changes, are due to purification taking place, unless in your meditation things begin to arise that you feel like are other than physical sensations, emotions, imagery, memories, whatever form it takes. That doesn't necessarily have to do with anything that's ever been part of your life, but just try to be with the unpleasantness, the discomfort, whatever it is, without the primary motive being to get rid of it. Just be with it and see if things don't come up that are far more recognizable as indicators that a purification really is taking place, rather than you've trained yourself that some parts of your mind can enter into a process that mitigates the symptoms, and they're not as bothersome, because the fact that they keep coming back doesn't, to me, directly say that, oh, there's a different purification happening now. I would tend to interpret more that you managed to sidestep the purification last time, and so now the same issues are coming up again. So I don't know that I can go much further with this without you being present, without the ability to ask you questions and things like that. But I would like you to seriously consider that as a possibility. It does take, purification can take so many different forms, but there is an underlying pattern that should emerge in not infrequently in those purifications. And that's that you're clearly getting in touch with some kind of emotional trauma or psychological conflicts from the past. And that this unfolds in such a way that more clarity and comfort around it as an emotional phenomenon develops. The physical sensations are mostly useful as a good entryway into that. If you can place your attention on unpleasant physical sensations with an attitude of just accepting and being there and being objective with them. These unpleasant sensations are arising. They're just there. And I'm going to observe them until they speak to me and tell me what they're really all about. Because purification isn't about physical sensations. Physical sensations are just something the mind generates to say, hey, we got a problem here. We've got something that needs to be purified. There's something that needs to be examined and integrated. And so you don't want to deal primarily with these external manifestations, these symptoms. You want to deal with the cause. You do that by objectively holding this unpleasantness in whatever form it takes, letting it speak to you, letting it be processed. The key to a purification is to hold things in consciousness so that all those other parts of the unconscious mind system can see this. All of the true purification is happening in the unconscious processing. It's not due to thinking about anything. It's due to just holding it in consciousness so every part of the mind system can look at this, assimilate this information, and integrate it. That is a purification process. Now, the result of that is going to be a greater unification of the mind because you have integrated parts of the mind system before that were preventing that. So you may very well have some pleasant energy sensations as a result of that. But between the unpleasant ones and the pleasant ones, there should come some kind of conscious experience that tells you that there are emotional and other issues being resolved. And inevitably, at least some of those times, you're going to be aware of exactly what they are. There's going to be memories, or there's going to be images that are symbolically representing that. So, yeah, I think that's as much as I can say until you communicate more. But I wish you the best of luck, and I hope this is helpful to you. Does anyone else have any questions or comments to make on my answer to Aga? Raise any questions in your mind about purification? Great. Let's go on to Amit's question then. How to deal with confusion combined with a degree of mindfulness? Now, Amit, I don't want you to answer this right now, but when I read through this, I had a little trouble seeing, I could see where the confusion was. I couldn't see the mindfulness in this very much. So we'll come back to that, okay? By confusion, I mean a state of mind that makes it impossible to focus on anything long enough because it feels like there is an unsolved problem and attention withdraws from any object it is directed and towards, and trying to direct it again and again leads to a state of anxiety like agitation. This state usually occurs after long periods of unskillful mental conduct, and it contains a lot of painful mental conditioning. Well, I'm just going to stop after that last sentence there and say, when you describe it's difficult, it's impossible to focus on anything very long. And it always feels like there's something else, some kind of agitation that prevents attention from staying on anything. Ahmed, have you read the description of monkey mind in stage 2?
Yes.
This sounds like monkey mind to me. Would you agree?
Not really. Like it's monkey. I think monkey mind does not feel bad. Like it's like the similar symptoms are similar, but it doesn't feel bad. Yeah.
It doesn't feel bad, you're saying?
I mean, the monkey mind I think it doesn't feel that bad. It's just like being lost in thoughts. But the state I describe is something like you have this, you have a degree of awareness. Like it's not that like you are completely lost, but you don't know what to do. Like there's this uncertainty.
Yeah. Well, what the term monkey mind is referring to is it's like a monkey in a cage. It just keeps jumping around, won't stay in any one place for any period of time. And no matter where it lands, it's going to jump again very soon. And I mean, that monkey mind doesn't feel bad, except that if you want your attention to be stable and it's not, that feels bad. It does have an underlying feeling of agitation. And that seems to be exactly what you're saying. So, yeah. Anyway, it relates to a suggestion I have about dealing with this when it arises, which is just give your monkey a bigger cage, be more tolerant of its need to move around, and more accepting of it. Still try to don't just let it run wild, because that plus your wish to have more stability of attention is just going to increase the agitation and make it much more uncomfortable, right? So that's one thing that you can do. Let me just go back to reading the rest of your question here. But when you say trying to direct it again and again leads to a state of anxiety-like agitation, that's exactly what happens when you fight against the monkey mind rather than being willing to accept that, okay, this is what's happening right now, so I have to deal with it on its own terms. You say this state usually occurs after long periods of unskillful mental contact, and it contains a lot of painful mental conditioning. So would you be at all willing to share, and you don't have to, what you mean by unskillful mental conduct?
I mean, it's hard to describe, but like when you practice mindfulness, like seeing the results of some certain actions, like, you know, when you do something, it will produce bad results.
Right.
So, and yeah, if you don't be careful about these actions later on, like it becomes a mess of mistakes, and you forget them, and you start to make other mistakes, and so yeah, this is what I mean by unskillful mental conduct.
All right, that makes a lot of sense to me. One thing about making mistakes and doing things that have unfortunate consequences for you and others is that overcoming that tendency doesn't happen immediately as soon as you recognize that, oh, you know, sometimes there's a lot of conditioning. Sometimes there's a lot of reasons why that happens that you're not aware of. And these do have to be resolved. You may do similar things quite a few times, but the cumulative effect of recognizing that, oh, this is something that I've seen before, that I've done before, I would like not to do. That every time you do that, it does reduce somewhat the tendency to do the same thing again. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yes.
Now, you can strengthen that a lot, and this is what I talk about in the Mindful Review appendix, is don't just stop with, oh no, I did it again, but relive that situation and help the process along. Think about what you could have done differently, okay? Not only was what you could have done differently, but how you might have perceived the situation differently, how you might have had different emotional reactions to whatever happened, different thoughts, because these are what lead to you acting differently. So yeah, what you want to do, of course, when you realize this, is not to do that again, but help the process along. Just think about and imagine how seeing things differently, feeling differently about them, and then as a result of seeing differently and feeling differently, you might have acted differently. So how you would act differently is a good place to start, but you have to back it up to what drives the action. You're going to find it makes a lot more difference doing this. It will take, instead of taking 50 repetitions of, oh no, I did the same thing again, I wish I wouldn't do that, it will take many fewer repetitions before, what happens in the moment is you remember this and you change your thoughts and you change your behaviors. Okay.
Okay.
So yes, Elizabeth.
Maybe just one other one other thought. The mindful review might be good. Another possibility is when you're starting a sit, just to stay in that step one of trying to stay in the present moment and just sort of seeing what is happening. And if what's happening is there are lots and lots of thoughts coming up about activities or something like that, you might choose at that point to kind of do a decision tree, right? Is there so much of this going on that what I should do instead is just do some mindful review? Or can I sit with it for a while, listen to that? And it may just be that those things sort of needed to be heard, and then they'd be content to recede a little bit. And then you could go on and just take your time going through that 4-step transition, so that, and you might never get to the breath, but to just go from, can I stay in the present moment? Can I stay with just body sensation anywhere? And things like that, to just see if things will quiet down. But if they aren't quieting down and the anxiety is building, and certainly as a student being up against deadlines and things like that, there are times, even if I've got a deadline, I've got something I've got to do for work, there's something I have to do for whatever, there are times when it's best just to say, all right, I really, maybe I can put this aside and meditate, or maybe I can't, I'd be better off to go do that thing and then come back and meditate later. And so part of it is just deciding if it really, where it is and what the best response to that feeling of urgency, because it kind of sounds like monkey mind, but it's also got this urgent, I have to do something about this now, which may be the piece that's making it unpleasant.
That's what's causing the monkey mind. Yeah. So the other part of what you asked about, Ahmed, is maintaining your motivation for awakening when you're in the midst of homework and deadlines and things like that. There is what the vast majority of people spend their entire lives doing is trying to change the external situation, or waiting until the external situation has changed, waiting till you finish university to get serious about practicing for awakening, etc. Well, I'll tell you an unpleasant truth here. That's the first of the Buddha's noble truths. Life is always going to be that. You're never going to get to the place where there aren't all kinds of demands on you, things like that. What awakening is about is not being able to change the world, but being able to change yourself and the way you react to these things. They're always going to be there. Can you imagine being in your situation right now, but being in this really clear, calm, comfortable place, no stress at all, where, okay, this is what I've got to do. What can I do about it? Okay, I'll do this. Oh, there's still these things that are problems, but, well, I can't really do anything about them. So I'll just accept that they're there until there is something I can do about them. Can you imagine that?
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's what awakening is about. And no matter where you are on the path of awakening, no matter how early you are in your practice, the more you practice, the more of that you're going to experience. The more often and the stronger that experience of acceptance doing what you can, clarity about what you can do and what you can't do, and feeling calm, comfortable, enjoying life in the midst of it. So even though there's all kinds of stuff, all kinds of demands on you today, and you feel the stress of that, taking a little time for yourself to practice meditation today is going to, and doing that consistently, is going to make it much easier for you to deal with no matter what it is that arises in the days to come. So, do I have any tips on dealing with the stress that is caused by hard-to-do responsibilities and for preserving the intention to awaken in the middle of hard work that one finds unpleasant and meaningless? Yeah, I do have some tips. Practice to whatever degree that you can, just acceptance of this is the way it is. This just is the way it is. And when your mind reacts by generating these feelings of unpleasantness and meaninglessness and things like that, accept that as well. Don't resist that. Don't succumb to it and say, oh yeah, this really is meaningless. There's no point to it. Don't succumb to it. But also don't resist it. Say, well, these feelings come up. This has happened to me before enough times, that yeah, you get to feeling like, oh, this is just too much, there's no point in it, things like that. But it passes away, right? You know that in the past. So when you're experiencing that, remind yourself, oh, this has happened before. It's okay. It's okay to feel meaningless. It's okay to feel like, oh, this is too much for me. It's not worth it. It's okay to feel that way, but it's not okay to succumb to it. Just, yeah, okay, that's the situation is what it is, and my mind's reaction to it is what it is. But when I can, I'm going to sit down and meditate, and that's going to lead to the place where I don't have nearly as big a problem with this as I do now. Make yourself feel better. Be optimistic. Be hopeful. Know that many, many people have trod this path before and been successful in exactly your kinds of situations. So you can too. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Good. Well, all right, let's see. Brad Cordova and Kim Nicholson have questions, and neither one of them are with us today, unless they join later. But anyway. So Brad writes, every time I check in, I don't experience any thoughts. There's nothing there. As I am following the breath, I will have a spontaneous awareness and bring myself to the breath, or I will spontaneously realize that there is a subtle or gross distraction. But when I actively check in, I never find anything. How do I check in? Or what does checking in feel like? Does it happen quickly, less than a second, or does it last multiple seconds? Well, last question first. It just takes a fraction of a second. What is happening when you check in? What is it and what does it feel like? Well, checking in is directing your attention to what is happening in your field of conscious awareness. Now, let's get the bigger picture of what's happening here. Your field of conscious awareness, that's whatever it is that you're conscious of in the moment. When you're paying attention to something, attention is a secondary process that happens within the field of conscious awareness. So you're never without awareness. But what does happen is that instead of having the conscious experience of a progressively clearer and wider, more open field of conscious awareness, what we tend to be is so used to using attention that when somebody says, be aware of, we move our attention to it. Now that will pass. But when you're here in stage 3, where we're using checking in, we say, okay, that's what your mind's going to do right now. Let's make use of it. Now, when attention is moving to distractions, it's moving from one thing in your field of conscious awareness, the sensations of your breath, to some other thing, a thought or a feeling or whatever else, or some other sensations. It's moving from one thing to another within the field of conscious awareness. When you're checking in, you're looking with attention to see what's happening in the field of conscious awareness. Now, that can't happen in real time. What happens is your mind creates a freeze frame of awareness. And when you turn your attention towards it, you see, oh, yes, my mind was, my attention was going to these other little things, even while it seemed like it was staying on the sensations of the breath. These other things were happening in my mind. This thought was taking place and things like that, all in the background. Now, that's what checking in should feel like. It should feel like, oh, I'm getting a glimpse of what was happening in my awareness. Now, the real fruit of this is that at some point, you don't need to direct your attention to awareness. You don't need to check in. That awareness is clear and present at all times, okay? That's where checking in is leading to. But at the stage you're at, attention is going to try to do everything. So let it. Take advantage of that. And in the process, let your mind learn how to sustain a clear and broad field of awareness. Now, what you've described, it's really good for showing exactly where you are, because both attention and awareness draw on the same power source, conscious power. You only have so much conscious power at this stage in your practice. So in order to focus your attention on the sensations of the breath, there's not as much power to sustain awareness. And so it collapses and shrinks down till the field of conscious awareness isn't that much bigger than the object of attention. Just enough so that there's some things in the background that your attention can be alternating with, thoughts and things like that. But it's not a very broad, and it's definitely not a very clear awareness. So when you're checking in and you're not seeing anything there, then the checking in is working. It's saying, what's there is dullness. Okay, I'm not seeing very much distraction taking place because I have so much dullness. The field of conscious awareness has collapsed so much that there's hardly anything there for attention to alternate with. So that's great. You know you need more conscious power. You know you need more awareness. The best way to get the conscious power is to try to maintain, as well as you can, a clear perception of the sensations of the breath or whatever else you happen to use as a meditation object, while at the same time maintaining this expanded and clear field of conscious awareness. Now, play with this. In stage 3, play with this a lot. Notice how more closely you focus, the less you are aware of anything else. Notice how the more you expand your field of awareness, the less clear and is your attention. It's like it gets very vague. Go back and forth. See, oh, wow, increasing one decreases the other, increasing the other decreases the one. Then try to maintain a particular level of focus and clarity of attention, while at the same time expanding awareness. And you're going to find when you do that, initially, yeah, there's this trade-off. But like strengthening a muscle, you'll get to where I can expand awareness without losing the clarity of attention. And the other side of that is you're going to find that you can increase the intensity of your focus without losing awareness. Now you're increasing conscious power. Checking in is just describing a simple practice. What I'm talking to you now are the fruits of doing that practice. Increasing conscious power enough so that you can maintain a wider and clearer field of awareness, while at the same time maintaining a very clear, sharp focus of attention. Okay? You're increasing conscious power. Not only that, as conscious power increases, that awareness is going to be there, and there's no need for attention to move to know whether there's gross distractions or to know whether there's dullness developing. Because that information is available in awareness at the same time, simultaneously, with you following the details of the sensations of the breath and noticing whether the pauses are longer and shorter than they were before, all that kind of stuff. Attention is doing its thing and has plenty of power to do it with. And awareness is being sustained at the same time. So that's the fruit the practice is leading to. Now, I'm going to go back to your questions and remind myself of what you were asking here. I think your second question is what we're getting into right now. Yeah, I'm just going to summarize in the progression of this. When you check in and you find nothing, then you know that that's not true. There's never nothing going on other than the focus of attention, except to the degree that you still have some attention before you fall asleep, right? There's always something going on, but you don't have, you know, that's what's happening to checking in, is it's not really, it's revealing to you just how lacking in awareness you are. So as you do this practice though, you'll end up having more awareness and more clarity of awareness. When you check in, you'll be able to see what's going on and you'll be able to act on it. And then as that progresses, then the movement of attention to check in becomes more and more superfluous and unnecessary and meaningless until you may check in. It's a tool in your toolbox that you'll always be able to use, but you won't use it as much. You'll use it when there's something you really need to know about what's happening in awareness, and that attention is the best tool to pick up on that because of its subtlety. So you'll never stop using checking in, but after you get into the fourth stage, it's not going to be playing that role anymore that it was, okay? So this is a progression. First you learn you don't have enough awareness to see anything. Then you begin to see things and it becomes useful and it helps to further stabilize your attention and further expand your awareness. And then you get to the point where there's no need to check in that way anymore for those purposes, okay? So that's my summary of the answer to the first question. So you say, their second question says, what does awareness actually feel like? Attention is clear, but awareness, I'm not sure which part it is. Yes, exactly, of course. I switch attention to them when something happens. I know there are times they're talking, but I don't notice because I'm focusing on the meditation object. That knowing without noticing is awareness without a movement of attention taking place. That's what awareness feels like. Awareness is all of the things that you know that are going on, but that you don't need attention to know. Well, attention can go and chase after those things, but it's not necessary in order for you to know it. Awareness is that knowing that doesn't require attention. That's what it feels like. I have used the example of vision, where you can focus your eyes on an object across the room and you're still in your peripheral awareness. You have in your peripheral vision, you see the rest of the room. The visual focus doesn't need to move in order to know something about the rest of your visual field. That's a really good analogy that might help you to understand what awareness feels like. Now, there's another visual analogy that I'll use where let's compare attention to a very bright spotlight. It has a narrow beam, but whatever that narrow beam lands on, it illuminates very brightly. And So attention is like that spotlight. Awareness is like a floodlight. It lights up a large area, but not nearly so brightly. Now, as I said before, the field of conscious awareness is basically where where attention plays, moving from one thing to another. So in this metaphor of the spotlight and the floodlight, imagine that you turn on your floodlight and you've got this large area that's illuminated, but not very brightly so. But then you turn on your spotlight, and now, because of what's floodlit, of course, beyond the edge of the floodlit area, you don't know what's there. It's just pitch black. But in the floodlit area, you can say, oh, there looks like something interesting. You direct your spotlight to that and you see exactly what it is. It's like being in a dimly lit cave looking for a lost gold ring in a dimly lit cave. The dim light allows you, if you were in a totally pitch black cave, you could spend forever moving your little torch from one place to another to see different things, and you still might not ever see the ring. But because of the dim lighting in the cage, because of the floodlight effect, you know where to point your spotlight, your torch, and you're much, much more likely to find the treasure that you're looking for in those circumstances. So imagine that there's a large floodlit area and that you have a spotlight that you can direct on whatever in that floodlit area looks interesting. Of course, one thing about your spotlight in the case of attention is that it has this a tendency to want to chase after all kinds of things in the field of conscious awareness. But for this discussion, it's kind of beside the point. It is that experience of knowing what's in the floodlit area, even while you're shining your spotlight on one particular thing, like the sensations of the breath. So I hope that that helps you to get the feel, and now you can further develop your awareness. There is a systematic way to do this. For the person who's never meditated and is untrained, they do have the form that their awareness most typically takes is just an awareness of sense of movement, of sounds, various sensations, things like that. And while they are present in awareness, the only thing that awareness does with them is say, oh, is this important? Is this dangerous? Is this promising some kind of reward? In which case, your mind tends to go chasing after it. Take advantage of that. Start out by developing awareness and your experience of awareness by those sensations. This is where the 4-step transition in stage 1 is going to be really useful and really powerful. As a matter of fact, it's going to be really useful to you for a long, long, long time. You shouldn't have the experience of, okay, I'm done with the 4-step transition, because then you're cheating yourself. What should happen over time as you progress through the stages is that every time you sit down and meditate, and every time you use a 4-step transition, you're going to understand everything about intention and awareness better than you did before. When you're at stage 5 and you go through the 4-step transition, you're going to have experiences and see clearly things that you never, ever could see at stage 4, much less at stage 3. You do not outgrow the 4-stage transition. That is the best place in the world to learn and understand more deeply what attention and awareness are all about. So you begin with what comes most naturally and easiest, which is extrospective awareness of sensations in your body and sounds and smells and all these other kinds of things. Then, as soon as awareness begins to become a little stronger, you begin to direct it internally to what is happening in your mind, including alternating attention, developing dullness, all of these other kinds of things. You start using that awareness in the training of the mind to become a better meditator. Okay? As awareness further develops, it takes on a metacognitive quality, one of the first things that you notice is that what you had called extrospective awareness and what you have called introspective awareness are not two different things. From a metacognitive point of view, those sounds and sensations that you had thought of as extrospective, they're actually occurring within your mind. Not that there isn't something outside your mind that's causing them, but your knowing of a sound is happening in your mind. The knowing of a sensation from your body is happening in your mind. This is the metacognitive level of awareness, where introspective awareness and extrospective awareness no longer make sense as separate distinctions, whereas they once did. Now you realize sensations arise in my mind as a result of external events, but the knowing of them is introspective. So yeah, all of these things are going to be very, very helpful to you in every aspect of meditation. Wish you were here and I could get your feedback. So you mentioned one last thing. Sometimes I feel my pulse in my head and body and a slight tingling feeling. Is that awareness? Absolutely, yes. Make use of whatever manifestations of awareness that you have to enhance awareness. That is, in a sense, we could go as far as to say the whole point of stabilizing attention is to keep it from hogging so much of your conscious power that you can't experience awareness. And the developing of awareness, or sati, or mindfulness, is the fruit that arises from stabilizing attention. So. Anybody else have any thoughts about this or want to make any comments?
Maybe I can have a question about this. In in moments of consciousness model, it's said that there are some moments of awareness and moments of attention, but like in earlier stages, I think I read that it occurs like spontaneously, like there is attention and awareness in same moment, like if I understand correctly in earlier stages. Yeah.
Yes, that is something that when I get around to redoing the moments of consciousness model, you see the moments, what I'm calling moments of consciousness, were originally formulated as moments of attention. I tried to adapt it to include awareness and ended up with this picture that has separate moments of attention and awareness, but that doesn't describe the reality, does it? They're both happening at the same time. So that's a flaw in that description. And I hope someday to have the time to be able to present something that's far more accurate and therefore far more utilitarian. Although I think the model as it is does serve some purposes, but it's just people far too quickly reach the point of saying, so something wrong with this. It doesn't really work like that. And that's the way it is with every model. You make a model airplane out of matchsticks and you quickly reach the point where you say, well, and a real airplane isn't like this. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. Ricardo?
I would say, so Brad is asking, what does awareness feel like? I would say it feels like feeling many things at the same time. Like I think like a proxy to get to awareness is try to diffuse your attention as much as possible on many things, and you will start getting a rough idea of how it feels.
Yeah, that's a good way to get a feel for it, trying to diffuse your attention. But
yeah,
the caution in that I'd want to make to somebody who's trying that is that what you really want to do is have very, very focused attention, very sharp, clear attention at the same time as having this. So remember that diffusing attention as a way to get in touch with awareness is just that. It's just a simple way to get in touch with what it feels like, but it's not what you're after in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just to get the feel, just to know how it feels. Then when you know how it feels, you try to combine the two.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you, Ricardo. That's very good, and I think that might be helpful to to our friend Brad. Okay. Anything else before I move on to Kim's question?
And also, do can we know something with awareness even in daily life, like a study topic we are studying, like for example a math theorem? Can we know this with awareness?
Like, for example, which?
Like a math theorem. Math.
Math.
Yeah, like a math theorem. Can we
Mathematics?
know this with
Oh, like
awareness?
a math. Yes, absolutely. But this is really what you're after. You know, everything that you do on the cushion is just practice for what's going to happen in your daily life. So typically in your daily life, the more that you're focused on something, the less awareness you have. So if something's very important or emotionally charged or something like that, your awareness collapses. Somebody says something to you that offends you, you have these strong emotions arise. That's why you tend to say things that demonstrate your lack of awareness. You forget who this person is that you're talking to. You forget the larger circumstances. Your highly focused response becomes totally inappropriate. Can you imagine having the kind of awareness where you know what you're doing and you know what effect it's having on other people, and you have this awareness of the bigger picture? It's obviously going to be very helpful to you, right? Your behavior is going to become more, quote, mindful. You will be less reactive and more responsive. You're going to have fewer things to regret later, right? That's why the mindful review is called the mindful review, because it's leading you to have more of that kind of mindfulness in your daily life, that kind of awareness. Ricardo?
I would say that, in fact, having awareness of mathematical theorems is an important part of doing mathematics. I think mathematicians do that all the
Yeah.
time, because when you want to connect several theorems together, you need to have the new awareness at the same time. It's what actually mathematicians have a word for that. They call it intuition. It's like trying to see the big picture, and then you get a rough idea of how these things connect, and then you use attention to go and try to look at the details, try to connect the things in a clear fashion, stuff like that.
Yes, that is very right. There's a difference between arithmetic and mathematics. Arithmetic is this linear left brain function. Mathematics tends to involve much more of the right hemisphere, the right brain. And it is big picture. So the two work together because you have to do arithmetic operations to do mathematics, right? But mathematics is all about the big picture, and the the arithmetical functions are just this. They're being able to use both faculties together. You become really good at mathematics, right? You set up the equation, right brain, big picture. Then you carry out the processes, left brain. The end result of it is you come up with a new way of seeing the problem that you were trying to solve.
That's in fact why automatizing, why mechanizing the theorem discovery is so difficult, and computers are not very good at discovering new theorems, because if it was just like applying things in a linear way, it would be easy, but looking at the big picture part is the part that computers have a lot of trouble with.
Yeah. So trying to take this back to what we're, the bigger picture of what we were talking about before. I would like to draw an analogy between what we just said and life. We regard life as a problem, and we can try to solve the problems of life using arithmetic. And we find it's not very successful. It has a certain limited degree of successfulness. But if we take more of the big picture approach, like a mathematician does to solving a problem, then when a mathematician solves his big picture problem, what has happened is he has caused to arise a totally new way of looking at things. And that's how we resolve the problems of life. We stop trying to take the arithmetic approach and, well, if I change this, if I change that, if I divide this by that or multiply this by that or something like that, I'm going to solve all the problems and everything's going to be better. Throw that out the window and say, okay, that's going to be a useful tool, but what I really want to do is change the big picture, and it's the big picture inside. It's my perspective on the world, because that's where all my problems are coming from anyway, and that's where the solution is. So we do the arithmetic with the goal of changing the big picture. Once the big picture is changed, then all of our problems totally appear totally different to us. Where we can do some more arithmetic to help resolve the problems, we do. But where the real problem was in our way of looking at it, by changing our way of looking at it, that problem is gone. Now things are much more understandable. They don't produce the same reactions of pain and suffering in us, and they don't cause us to react in the world in ways that cause unnecessary pain and suffering to others. So we can use the mathematics as an object, use mathematics as an analogy for what this whole awakening project is about. Solving the big picture problem by changing how we look at it. Then all of a sudden we understand everything so much better. We don't have to be so concerned with trying to change the world around us. All right. Let's look at Kim's question here. So Kim also acknowledged that she wouldn't be able to be here today. She says, I have been practicing with TMI since May last year, and I'm currently working at stage 6 mostly. A few months back, when I started stage 5 practice and working on overcoming subtle dullness, I've noticed an increase in mental energy. Yes, I'm noticing a lot of stuff I didn't notice before, both mental and physical. One very prominent phenomenon that is both a distraction on and off the cushion is the feeling of energy in my forehead and between my eyebrows. There's a feeling of agitation when I close my eyes, making it harder to close my eyes completely. This is especially an issue when I'm going to sleep. When trying to sleep, I try to keep an awareness of the body and the softness, warmth, and comfort of the bed. Yes, but it's often difficult to not get distracted and worked up by the energy in my eyes and forehead and the fact that I can't close them entirely. Should I just ignore it and eventually it might work itself out? Okay, I'm going to leave the last part of her question. Well, you don't ignore it. Ignoring it is just another way of resisting or avoiding it or hoping it will go away. You accept it, and eventually it might work. Eventually it will work itself out. The key to this is acceptance. The feeling of energy is actually a sign of something that's very, very good that's taking place. There are always these feelings of energy as your mind begins to become more unified. Because you're noticing this at stage 5, you're, most people don't feel this very strongly until they get past stage 7, but it doesn't matter. For some people, it occurs much earlier. What it is, it's tangible evidence of the unification of your mind that's taking place as a result of the practice. So in essence, it is a good thing. It's a sign of progress. But it's also distracting and uncomfortable, okay? It can be just uncomfortable, but not a problem, as long as you don't resist it, as long as you don't develop this I don't want this to be here kind of attitude. So you have to just accept it. Oh yes, and not only can you just accept it, as it's not an oh no kind of acceptance. Oh no, well, I'm just going to accept it. Nothing I can do about it. It's a oh yes kind of acceptance. Okay, yeah, this is happening, but it's actually a good thing, and it's okay. And therefore, I'll just go on with my life, including going to sleep and things like that, while letting it be there. So that will take care of, you say there's a feeling of agitation when I close my eyes. Well, think about what is being agitated here? What is causing the agitation? It's your mind's negative reaction to the sensation. Now, you can't magically make that go away, but you can intend to just let go of that resistance. And by doing so, you'll begin to really notice a decrease in the agitation, just from, it's accepting it. It's okay. It's all right. Yeah, I may have a little more trouble going to sleep, but that's only temporary, and I'll still probably get enough sleep. Okay. It's difficult not to get distracted and worked up by the energy. Well, what you want to do is allow yourself to be distracted by it, but not get worked up by it. The energy sensation is not causing this experience of worked upness. That is your mind's reaction to it. And what you have to do is the parts of your mind system that have clarity about this is to communicate to the parts of the mind system that are trying to make it go away that, hey, it's okay, just let it be. We collectively are going to suffer far more by being worked up by this than we are by just allowing it to be there, just allowing the distraction to happen, just allowing that it's going to sometimes be harder to go to sleep. Okay. Yeah, sometimes it's going to be harder to close your eyes completely. Well, you can be far more successful at going to sleep or meditating without closing your eyes completely than you are at being able to get rid of the cause, because it's and so what you should do is just accept it, and eventually it will work itself out. Is there anything anybody would like to comment on or add to that for Kim's benefit? All right, let's look at do you have any experience on whether meditation can induce migraine with aura? And she describes what this is. I know very well what this is. No, I have never encountered that. Unless something has changed recently, not too much is known about the actual causes of the mechanisms by which a migraine headache develops, and the mechanisms by which the aura are produced are pretty well understood. They mostly have to do with a painful dilation of blood vessels in the brain, and the eye, by the way, is a part of the brain. It's an extension of the brain. So both the pain of the migraine and the aura, the mechanism by which they happen is well understood. The causes are not. In my experience, nothing about the meditation practice is particularly conducive to people who are prone to migraines having more migraines. On the other hand, I can easily see that there may be triggers for why migraines happen that occur at that higher, more psychological and emotional level. So somebody who is prone to migraines may possibly, like I say, I haven't really encountered this, but I can see the possibility of somebody whose migraines have some sort of higher brain level, emotion-based or thought, perception, conceptual-based reactivity act as a trigger for migraines. So I'm just saying, well, maybe if you're having more migraines than you were, that it's because something is triggering them. But no, I haven't really heard of that before. Well, we run out of questions, so it's open to anything at this point.
There's one thing I would say to Kim, and it's to try to spend some time looking for the pleasantness in the energy that's present in the forehead and the space between the eyebrows. Because I don't know, I have the feeling, I personally find those kind of energies very pleasant. I don't know if something particular about my mental makeup or something, but it's been really helpful to see like the soothing effect or the, I don't know, the pleasantness that there is in that energy, because that energy is actually available almost anytime you put your attention there. So it's like an endless source of relaxation, of good feelings.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Kim already acknowledged that she experiences a lot more mental energy and notices more things that she didn't before. So she's already experiencing the benefits of that energy. It's just she's resisting the physical manifestations of it at the same time. So. I'm not seeing any change. I don't know if I've lost my internet connection or.
It seems I lost my internet connection for a bit. I don't know if you hear me now.
That's good. Yeah, that's a very good point that you brought to Kim's attention, which she's already in one context recognized the benefits of that increased energy, but it's useful to put that positive benefit up side by side with how she's reacting to the physical sensation. So, yeah. Elizabeth, I don't hear you. Can anybody else hear Elizabeth? Is it just me or?
I can't hear it either.
No, I can't hear her.
Well, I'm sure she had something very valuable to say, but unless she can figure out what the sound problem is. She's put something in the chat for us. Yes, to look for restful sensations as well as pleasant sensations. Yes. Well, that's what Ricardo referred to as the relaxation. Yeah, yeah, because there is a relaxation associated with that. Yeah. Well, anything else?
Actually, something came to my mind when you talked about blood vessels in brain. Do you feel a degree of uncertainty while talking about matters about science? Like, because like you mentioned that the knowledge that science brings is different than the knowledge we hope to acquire in this spiritual practice.
No, not at all. I feel like, you know, the scientific knowledge and the knowledge we gain through meditation and introspection are totally complementary to each other. We can take the things that have been learned through the sciences and we can use them to help us understand the things that we discover in meditation and through introspection. And likewise, the other way around, that the more we understand the mind and the way it works, it can provide us with valuable insights into what we observed about the physical universe around us. The whole area of quantum physics has just so much overlap with the wisdom knowledge that has been gained through spiritual practices. And David Bohm was somebody who focused a lot on that. But also you'll find that Niels Bohr, the founders of quantum physics, all got into very esoteric and mystical and spiritual kinds of they wrote some very profound and interesting things as physicists about. So there's a lot of overlap. There's no inconsistency at all. No, all I was calling attention to with the reference to migraines is that science knows that it doesn't know the cause. It only knows the mechanism why it happened. It doesn't know why those blood vessels dilate in the way they do. Science can't tell us why they happen. That happens in some people, but not others. And it can't tell us why it happens when it does. But science can very well describe what the mechanism is, what the process is, the steps that happen one after another. And the proof of the accuracy of the description by science of what is causing a migraine can be demonstrated by the things that, by the effectiveness of applying that understanding to trying to deal with a migraine. So if you know that a migraine is due to expanded blood vessels in your head, then in theory, if you sit in a very hot bath and divert huge amounts of blood flow to your body while putting a cold pack on your neck, basically cooling the blood that flows to your brain. And as the temperature drops in your brain, blood vessels will contract, not be so dilated. And that works. If somebody feels a migraine coming on and they can quickly, or somebody experiences the aura, if they quickly enough get into a very hot tub of water and put ice packs on their neck, on the back of their neck, and even nearer on the sides near the carotid arteries, they can often stop the migraine just like that. So that's a demonstration that scientific knowledge of the mechanism is accurate, but science is open and honest with itself and everybody else that, yeah, but we don't know what triggers it. So does that answer your question? I think science and meditation, spiritual exploration are 100% totally compatible with each other and complementary to each other. No conflicts at all anywhere.
Yeah, sometimes science feels too conceptual, and you don't have access to all experiments that are conducted, so you just sometimes accept things and conclusions of the other scientists. So it feels sometimes uncertainty there is, and there is approximations always in experiments. So
Yeah,
I mean,
that's absolutely true. That's human nature, though. That's not science. Yeah, scientists always prefer to believe things work the way they were taught as undergraduates and graduate students. It's hard to make enough scientists acknowledge that, well, things aren't like that after all. But they do come, that's the human side of scientists. That's not a problem with science. That what inevitably happens as the evidence accumulates, and sometimes it takes some new people coming along who've been exposed to new ways of looking at things as students. But eventually science comes around to adopting things that there was resistance to before. Human nature is not to want to change the fundamental views of reality unless it absolutely has to. That's the same problem that we have in trying to awaken. Our mind resists. We're looking at things through the lens of delusion, and the mind resists having to change its worldview based on wisdom. But it will do so if you keep confronting it with enough evidence, enough experience. It will change. Science will always be imperfect to the degree that human beings who are scientists are imperfect. And that's fine. That's all right. Actually, we find an extension of that into the general population. There's a lot of anti-science sentiment because the things that science says they would force such a change in the way some people see things that they prefer to take an anti-science bias rather than make those changes. And that's why we see a lot of the trends we do today. But in the long run, we know what's going to happen. Ricardo?
I would like to share a state. So something happened this week that I found remarkable. So there was I was doing my daily meditation this time during the night, and I reached a state that was very, I don't know, wonderful. I mean, I don't know how to describe it. Very interesting. So one thing that was remarkable was that at the beginning, I set like a strong motivation. Like I could feel the strong motivation, and then as soon as I started the practice, I felt the sati was already very strong, and then the attention started to stabilize, but it was incredible because even I don't know, I could get distracted and know that I was being distracted, know that that distraction would end soon, know that after that distraction would end, I would come back, know I don't know like the strength of the distraction, but also know that that it would not, it would not make me forget that I was meditating.
Mm-hmm.
And from that state, I could even, start having some kinds of bodily distortions that I've been told are related to the first jhana. And I would feel my body expanding, and the density of the body lessening, so it could, like, the body would feel more dilute, more airy kind of. and then other kind of body distortions would happen. And you know, usually when I enter that state, and then I don't know, I stay there for a little bit, and then I get distracted. When I realize I got distracted and I come back, the state is not there anymore. But this time, I could, you know, I could be in that state. I could see a distraction popping up. I could actually choose to go to the distraction, entertain the thought for a little bit, come back to the state, and the state will still be there. And that was, I mean, I didn't know that that could even happen. It was quite cool.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
That's a very metacognitive state.
exactly. Yeah, that's how it felt. Obviously, the day after that, I got nothing because I was too excited about what happened the last day.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the experience one day gives you the perspective that will allow that experience to recur.
That's great.
Well, maybe this is a good time to call this session to an end. I think it was a good one. And oh, we have somebody just joining us in time to say goodbye. Yes. Well, maybe give Vlad a moment to come online and we'll say hello and goodbye to him. Well, have a wonderful time over the next 2 weeks before we meet again. I'll see you then.
Thank you. You too.
Goodbye.
Have a wonderful time.
We're just ending the session, so. But we'll have the recording up for you soon. Okay.
Thank you. All the best.
Have a good day, sir.
Next time, okay?